These days, one madman has thrown the entire city into chaos. Fear hangs in the air so heavy that even stepping outside feels like stepping into a death trap. And then one night, a man named Adam fell right into his clutches. When he came to, he was locked inside a filthy, broken-down bathroom, his ankles shackled with heavy chains bolted to the floor. He tugged, pulled, fought, but nothing gave. Panic set in, and his voice cracked as he shouted for help. From somewhere in the dark, another man answered. He couldn't see him at first, only the echo of his voice bouncing off the wet, moldy tiles. Then a flick of a switch. Harsh, fluorescent light buzzed to life, and that's when they both froze, because right there on the grimy floor was a dead body. One hand gripped a revolver, the other held a cassette player, like it was left behind for them on purpose. Their minds raced. What the hell was this? And how were they supposed to get out? Adam swore his kidneys had been ripped out, but when the doctor, yes, the other prisoner, Lawrence, was a doctor, checked him over, he shook his head. If that were true, you'd already be dead, he said flatly, which meant one thing. They were being kept alive for a reason. Lawrence's eyes scanned the room until he spotted a pristine, ticking clock on the wall. Someone wanted them to feel every second pass. Why? That's when Adam found a cassette in his pocket. Lawrence checked his, pulling out an envelope with another tape, a bullet, and a small key inside. He tried the lock on his shackle, no luck. Tried Adam's, still nothing. Furious, he hurled the key aside. Adam's eyes darted to the cassette player clutched in the corpse's hand. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the answers were on those tapes. With trembling hands, he dragged it closer, popped the cassette in, and hit play. Static crackled, then a chilling voice filled the room. You're probably wondering where you are. This is where you'll take your last breath. You've spent your life spying on others, prying without their consent. Did you ever feel disgusted by yourself? Did you ever feel shame? Probably not. But today you will. The difference is, you don't have time to regret it. Still, I'll give you a chance to survive. Let's see what you're willing to do. Lawrence wanted to hear his own tape, but Adam refused to hand over the Walkman. If he tossed it across the room, it could shatter, and then they'd be left with nothing. With no choice, Lawrence slid his cassette across the grimy tiles, and the second Adam hit play, the truth slammed into them like a punch to the chest. The killer had given Lawrence a deadline, 6 o'clock. By then he had one task, kill Adam. If he didn't, his wife and daughter would die. And then came the riddle, almost mocking. X marks the spot where the treasure lies. The end is hidden in your heart. The game begins now. Lawrence scanned the room, his eyes landing on a crude heart drawn above the cistern. Inside, he found a plastic bag, 2 hacksaws gleaming in the sick light. Desperate, they both went to work, sawing furiously at their chains, sweat dripping, panic rising. But in the rush, Adam's blade snapped, shards of metal clanging against the wall as he cursed and hurled it aside. Lawrence kept cutting, but exhaustion set in. That's when the horrific realization hit him. These saws weren't meant for the chains. They were meant for their legs. The room went silent with dread. Lawrence knew this pattern. Years earlier, the city had been haunted by a sadistic mastermind the media called the Jigsaw Killer. He never left fingerprints, never got caught, but he left his victims' choices. Gruesome, impossible choices. Lawrence knew because he had once been accused of being Jigsaw himself. He remembered one case vividly, a man named Paul who had tried to kill himself by slitting his wrists. Jigsaw gave him another shot at life if he wanted it. The test? Crawl through a maze of razor-sharp barbed wire to reach an open exit door. He had 2 hours. At 3 a.m., the door would lock forever. Paul tried. He tore himself apart, flesh peeling, blood everywhere, inching toward freedom, but he bled out before he could make it. That night, the press gave the faceless monster his name. From then on, he was known as the Jigsaw Killer. Jigsaw never pulled the trigger himself. He built the game, and the victims pulled it for him. His next target was a man named Mark. Locked inside a bare concrete room, his veins already laced with slow-acting poison, his only chance at survival lay inside a steel safe. The code was written on the walls, but there was a catch. His skin had been smeared with a layer of flammable liquid, and the only light he had to read that code was a single flickering candle. One wrong move, one breath too close to the flame, and he'd turn into a living torch. Mark never cracked the puzzle. His body was found charred and twisted. The cops swept the room, and what they found next changed everything. A pen, possibly dropped by the killer. Forensics pulled a match. Dr. Lawrence Gordon's fingerprints. Detectives David Tapp and Stephen Singh dragged him in for questioning, drilling him on his whereabouts between 9 and 11, the night of the murder. Gordon stayed silent. Even with his lawyer present, all he admitted was that he wasn't at the hospital, he was with another woman. Not exactly an alibi that cleared his name. With the pen tying him to the scene, his lawyer begged him to come clean, because this was the kind of evidence that buries a man. And then the detectives played their trump card. They brought in a survivor, the only one known to have beaten Jigsaw's game. Her name was Amanda. She sat trembling, scarred by the memory of the device strapped to her jaw, a reverse bear trap locked to her face, a countdown timer ticking down the seconds until it would rip her skull apart. Jigsaw didn't just tell her the rules. He showed her a live demo on a TV screen, another victim's head obliterated in seconds. Amanda screamed, but she had her task. The key was inside the stomach of a man lying unconscious on the floor. A surgical knife gleamed beside him. She picked it up, and that's when the man's eyes shot open. Drugged, paralyzed, he couldn't fight back. Time was running out. Amanda carved into him, her hands slick with blood, until she pulled the key from his gut and freed herself. She lived. She carried the horror with her. And still, nobody knew who Jigsaw really was. Back in the bathroom, Adam stumbled across a shard of broken glass, the mirror he'd smashed earlier with his saw. As he held it up, realization hit. The mirror hadn't just been glass. It was two-way. With a surge of panic, Adam smashed the rest of it open. Behind the frame, hidden in the darkness, was a camera. All this time, someone had been watching, every second, every scream. In the chaos of that filthy bathroom, midnight crept in without them even realizing it. Lawrence's heart sank. His daughter's life was slipping away with every tick of the clock, and he had barely 6 hours left to save her. The tape had promised, find the X and the game ends. But no matter how hard they searched, the X never revealed itself. The story rewinds 24 hours, to the moment a stranger slipped into his daughter's bedroom. She woke terrified, rushed to tell her mother, but her mother brushed it off as a nightmare and tucked her back in. Seconds later, a masked intruder smothered the girl and bound them both, gagged and tied, mother and daughter struggling against the ropes. The figure pressed a stethoscope to the girl's chest, listening to her heartbeat as if savoring her fear. Was he a doctor? Whoever he was, someone else was watching them from the shadows. Detective David Tapp. For years he'd been obsessed, piecing together every shred of evidence, yet he still couldn't unmask Jigsaw. He had once interrogated Gordon, convinced the doctor was their killer, but when the case seemed too thin, Gordon walked free. Still, Tapp couldn't shake the suspicion. His obsession pushed him deeper into Amanda's case, studying the grainy video of her ordeal. Then something clicked. In the background of the footage, faint but unmistakable, was the wail of a fire alarm. That meant the video was shot near a recent fire site. If they could track every emergency in the past 2 weeks, they might pin Jigsaw's lair. One lead stood out, a fire alarm at an abandoned mannequin factory just a week earlier. Tapp and his partner, Detective Singh, stormed the derelict building, flashlights sweeping across cracked mannequins and rusted machinery. And then a nightmare tableau, a man strapped into a monstrous contraption, head locked between 2 industrial drills, whirring blades inches from his skull. Jigsaw wasn't there, but he had been, so the detectives lay in wait. Minutes later, the trap's creator walked in. Guns drawn, they pounced, shouting for him to freeze, but Jigsaw didn't run. Instead, he triggered the machine, snapping its starter, locking the trap into motion. Now the countdown was live, 30 seconds until twin drills tore into the victim's brain, and no way to kill the power without finding the main fuse. Time was bleeding out, and they had to choose, catch the killer or save the man. Tapp had his gun locked on Jigsaw, finger tight on the trigger, when the killer finally cracked and revealed the key that could save the man strapped to the drill trap. But the cruel twist? The key ring was loaded with dozens of keys and time was bleeding out. Detective Singh fumbled, none of them worked. In desperation, he fired a shot at the drill bit, sparks flying, the noise snapping Tapp's focus for just a second. That was all Jigsaw needed. With lightning speed, he slashed Tapp's throat and bolted. Singh gave chase, firing round after round, the echo of gunshots rattling through the factory halls. Finally, he caught him in his sights and pulled the trigger. One clean hit in the back. Jigsaw collapsed. It looked like the nightmare was over. But when Singh closed in, the factory floor came alive with another trap. Metal snapped, wires whipped, and in one brutal instant, Singh was gone. Back in the shadows, Tapp bled out. his obsession eating him alive. From that night forward, he was a broken man, his career gone, his mind unraveling, and only one thing left driving him: the hunger to catch Jigsaw. Cut back to the bathroom. It's now 1 a.m. Lawrence and Adam sat drained, hope slipping away. Lawrence pulled a photo of his daughter from his wallet, his hands trembling. Adam's eyes widened. The picture showed not only the girl, but Lawrence's wife too, both gagged and bound, prisoners of the very monster who held them here. He kept this revelation to himself, hiding the photo, but on the back was a cryptic message. Sometimes, even with your eyes closed, you can still see. Adam knew what it meant, but he couldn't let Lawrence catch on. So casually, he told him to switch off the lights. The room plunged into darkness, and there it was, a glowing X right behind Lawrence. They smashed through the plaster, revealing a locked metal box. That first key, the one Lawrence had tossed aside in anger, it had been for this all along. Miraculously, they still had it. Inside the box lay a cell phone, 2 cigarettes, and a chilling note. "You don't need a gun to kill Adam, Doctor. Just give him one of these." The plan was devilishly simple, the cigarette laced with poison. Adam, already shaking with nicotine cravings, begged for one. The trap was set, but Lawrence didn't hand it over. Instead, with trembling fingers, he grabbed the phone and dialed, only to discover the cruelest twist yet. The phone wasn't for calling out. It could only receive calls in. Last night, the same nightmare had hit Lawrence. Running late from the hospital, he thought he'd call his wife, but the parking garage was a dead zone. No signal. Out of nowhere, a masked figure ambushed him, knocking him out cold. Now, in this room of horrors, Lawrence lays it all out, hoping Adam will finally come clean. How he knew about X, and what else he's been hiding. After relentless pressure, Adam cracks, spilling the truth and handing over the photo. Seeing his family's lives on the line, Lawrence's faith wavers. For a split second, he considers burning Adam with a cigarette to save them. But then, another idea sparks. He kills the lights, whispers a desperate plan, and when the bulb flicks back on, Adam takes a cigarette. He smokes, convulses, and drops dead. Lawrence believes he's completed his task. "Now let me go," he begs. But the moment of relief shatters. Adam is electrocuted, screaming. The illusion breaks. He never died. He was faking it all along. The failed gambit drives Lawrence into madness. Meanwhile, Adam remembers the night before. In his dark apartment, he was finishing photo prints when a faint noise crawled through the silence. He searched. Nothing. Then came the laughter. A chilling, mechanical laugh. Sitting on his couch was a grotesque puppet. Adam snapped, smashing it to pieces, only to find Jigsaw waiting inside the closet. One swift strike, and Adam went under. Now, with only 25 minutes left until 6 a.m., Lawrence's phone rings. His daughter's sobs echo through the line, pleading. They're tied up, and a man with a gun is watching them. Lawrence's hands tremble. He can't save them. He speaks to his wife, Anna, one last time. She asks, trembling, "Is Adam there with you? If he is, don't trust him. He's known you far longer than you realize." Before he can respond, the call is ripped away. Why would Anna say that? Suspicion boils and a vicious argument ignites between the two men until Adam finally drops the ultimate truth. Late at night, Anna's suspicions had already poisoned the air. She believed Lawrence was sneaking around with another woman, so she paid Adam, a bottom-feeding voyeur who made a living spying on people's secrets, to dig into Lawrence's life. For days, Adam followed him, camera in hand, waiting for the truth to crack open. And it did. Just last night, Lawrence had gone to meet a woman, and when confronted, he denied everything. Until Adam laid out the photos, the undeniable evidence he'd stuffed inside the same bag that once held the hacksaws. But something didn't add up. Why had Lawrence spent barely a minute with her before storming out? The truth was darker than an affair. That night, a stranger called him out of nowhere, whispering that he was being watched. Fear rattled him so hard that he bolted, only to be snatched right out of the parking lot, which meant one thing. Whoever hired Adam to spy on Lawrence was the same person who locked them in this hellhole. And Anna? She was never capable of orchestrating something this twisted. Pressed to confess, Adam described his employer, a middle-aged man, tall, dark-skinned, with a scar carved across his throat. Lawrence's heart sank. He knew instantly. It was Detective Tapp, the cop who'd spiraled out of control after losing his partner. The cop who'd been thrown off the force but never let go of his obsession with Lawrence. Tapp believed Lawrence was tied to the killings, and Adam, by working for him, had walked straight into a nightmare. For Lawrence, life had once been perfect, until every heartbeat now echoed with the dread of being hunted. Then Adam's eyes froze on another photo. Inside Lawrence's own house stood a man. Lawrence recognized him immediately. Zepp, an employee from his hospital, which twisted the knife even deeper. Was Zepp the one pulling all the strings? And as the weight of that question crushed down on them, the clock struck 6. By now, Anna had already broken free from the ropes around her hands. The second she got the chance, she lunged at Zepp, wrestled the gun from him, and aimed it straight at his head while calling Lawrence. But before she could pull the trigger, Zepp dove at her, and in the chaos, a shot went off. Detective Tapp heard the news and stormed toward Lawrence's house with his weapon drawn, kicking the door open just as bullets started flying between him and Zepp. On the other end of the line, Lawrence could hear his little girl crying for her life, her voice shattering him from the inside out. He was helpless, paralyzed by the sound, unable to save her. Anna, clutching her daughter, slipped away and hid in the shadows while Zepp brutally overpowered Tapp, leaving him bloodied on the floor. Reloading his gun with cold precision, Zepp headed straight for Lawrence and Adam to finish the job, unaware that Tapp, battered but unbroken, was right on his heels. Back in the room, Lawrence convulsed as electricity ripped through his body. For a terrifying moment, he went still, like death had taken him. Then with a gasp, he came back, fighting through the haze. The phone rang again, its shrill echo taunting him. It was just out of reach, no matter how hard he clawed at the floor. The sound of his daughter's cries drove him insane, until rage and desperation fused into one horrifying decision. He tied off his leg, clenched his teeth, and began cutting. Meanwhile, Zepp and Tapp burst into Jigsaw's lair, locked in a savage fight that ended with Tapp bleeding out on the ground. Across town, Anna reached her father's house and frantically called the police, praying they weren't too late. Lawrence, barely clinging to life, dragged himself to the corpse in the corner and found the gun. He loaded the single bullet from the envelope, raised the weapon, and shot Adam. But the clock had already betrayed him. The kill was supposed to happen before 6 a.m. He had failed the game. Adam's death was nothing but another cruel twist in a nightmare that had no winners. As Zepp lunges in for the kill, Adam snaps. He launches himself at him with raw desperation, hammering him to the ground until Zepp lies lifeless. Lawrence, drained but clinging to hope, promises Adam he'll come back with help. And then, silence. That silence shatters when the corpse that's been lying in the middle of the room this whole time slowly rises. It wasn't a corpse at all. It was Jigsaw, alive, waiting, watching, playing his masterpiece until the final act. Adam's face twists in pure horror as the realization sets in. The so-called dead man was the puppet master. Jigsaw doesn't kill him. That would be too easy. He locks Adam inside that hellish room, leaving him to rot, screaming in the dark. But here's the question that echoes louder than Adam's cries. Why? Why design such sadistic games? The answer lies in the man behind the mask, John Kramer. Once just an ordinary civil engineer with a stable life, until fate sucker punched him with terminal cancer. Suddenly staring at death, he saw the world differently, saw people wasting their lives, throwing away second chances, and so he made a choice. If they wouldn't value their lives, he'd force them to. His lessons came wrapped in blood, pain, and impossible choices. Twisted games where survival meant tearing yourself apart to earn it. The pen stolen from the hospital, his move, the setup that framed Dr. Lawrence, his plan, and Zepp, the one who seemed like the villain all along, just another pawn. Poison coursed through his veins, and Jigsaw dangled the antidote like a prize. His mission, hold Lawrence's family hostage, and if the doctor failed his test, pull the trigger before time ran out. Zepp was never free. He was just another victim, chained by fear. That's the nightmare of Jigsaw. He doesn't just trap bodies, he traps souls, twisting them into unwilling pieces of his puzzle. And that, my friends, is the story of Saw, a tale not just about death, but about how far one man would go to make life mean something.